This conference will now be
Good
recorded.
afternoon, and thanks for joining us for our first of 5 videos in our April series called Factual Friday, where we'll be focusing on myths and facts associated with sexual assault. As many of you know, April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and we are excited to share some new content with you guys. So, there's a lot of information that circulates about sexual violence and people affected by it. The following myths are common and can impact survivors of assault or abuse, as well as the behavior and effectiveness of friends, family, medical staff, social services, and law enforcement personnel. Each week, we'll be tackling 4 to 5 new myths that hopefully will help increase your knowledge about sexual assault. All right, the first myth we are going to be tackling today is that rape does not happen that often. Being out in the community, doing education and outreach, we hear this question all the time. Does it actually happen that often? Is this something that we really need to be concerned about? So there's statistics that say on average, almost 300,000 victims ages 12 or older of rape and sexual assault each year in the United States. This means that one sexual assault occurs every 107 seconds, or on average, about every 2 minutes in the United States. 1 in 5 women and 1 in 71 men will be a victim of sexual assault during their lifetime. And sexual assaults remain one of the most underreported crimes, with more than half still being left unreported. So we can see how these numbers can actually be quite staggering. Um, Women ages 17 to 24 are at an elevated risk for sexual violence. Among undergraduate students, 26.4% of females and 6.8% of males experience rape or sexual assault through force, violence, or incapacitation. 23.1% of transgender, genderqueer, or non-conforming college students have been sexually assaulted, and only about 20% of female student victims age 18 to 24 ever report their sexual assault to law enforcement. So these numbers can be kind of hard to wrap our head around, right? If we're thinking about the statistic 1 in 5 women and 1 in 71 men, that may be difficult for us to kind of grasp what that looks like. So I like to equate it to potentially what your social media following looks like. So take a look at your Facebook or your Twitter feed or your Instagram followers and see about how many people are following you, and then gauge the percentage of males to females. And then sometimes this can give you a really good idea of how many people you have contact with on a daily basis who may or may not have experienced sexual assault or rape in their lifetime. This is also really important to remember what we are posting on social media and who it's affecting. So if we're posting really, positive quotes and images and calling out sexual violence or jokes about sexual violence and things like that, who we could be impacting and how we can have a positive impact on those people who follow us on our social media. Okay, myth number 2. If a parent teaches a child to stay away from strangers, they will not be molested or raped. So, with this one, I like to go back to when I was growing up and think about the conversations that, my adult allies had with me about how to stay safe. Who did they tell me to stay away from? How did they explain who the bad people were? What did they look like? Where did they hang out? What did they act like, and things like that. So if your parents or adult allies were anything like mine, you've probably heard the phrase stranger danger, and maybe even use it with your own children today. And yes, it is very important to teach our kids about strangers and not to talk to strangers um, don't go with strangers. But sometimes strangers can be good people who we may need to go to if we're in help. So, or if we need help. So sometimes it's better to talk about safe people and not safe people, and how safe people may be people in uniforms, and that if we, need assistance, we want to find a nurse, an EMT, a police officer, a firefighter, something like that. Um, so with the statistics I'm about to share with you, hopefully it will broaden your conversations with the young people that are in your life about how to not only talk to them about stranger danger, but also about the people in our own lives. So the truth to the statistic is that 60% of child sexual abuse cases are perpetrated by someone that the child knows outside of the family. So this can be a family friend, this can be someone in a church congregation, this can be a coach, this could be, um, an aunt and uncle, something like that. 30% are assaulted by a family member, someone that again the child knows. So this statistic can be a little scary. We're basically saying that 90% of sexual violence that happens with children are perpetrated by someone that they know. So focusing solely on stranger danger is not the greatest conversation to have. So this lays out for us the need to be having conversations with our kids about trusting your gut about uncomfortable people. What does it feel like to be in an uncomfortable situation? How do you know if maybe this person is making you feel uncomfortable? What does it feel like in your tummy? What happens to your body? How does your body react? Do you start sweating? Do you start shaking? Do you feel really tense? What are these body signals that they can notice when they need to get out of a situation? Also having conversations about how no one has the right to touch their private parts, making sure that we're using appropriate body language when having these conversations, or appropriate language about body parts, making sure that we are not calling their private parts things like cookies or butterflies or peepees. When we make up these nicknames for these very important body parts, we are doing them a disservice by taking away their ability to ask for help or let people, trusted adults know when something bad has happened to them. Imagine a young child coming to you and saying that someone ate their cookie or their butterfly died or someone played in their pee-pee. In your own family, this might make sense, but if they are to outcry to a teacher or a family friend, or another friend, then that person may not understand what they're saying. So using correct vocabulary is very, very important in these situations. Okay, myth number 3, people that have been sexually assaulted will be hysterical and crying. So the fact with this one is that everyone responds to trauma differently. Some people may actually laugh or cry. Others may not show any emotion at all. There is a wide variety of responses that can happen when someone has been raped or sexually assaulted. We may think that we would act in one way. We may prepare that if this ever happens, this is what I will do. And our body may not necessarily agree with that. So we have generally fight, flight, and freeze are, the 3 different responses that we have to a traumatic incident. So fight, we kick, we scream, we push, we do everything we can to get out of that situation. Flight, we run away, right? As soon as we can get away, we run as fast as we can. We flee that situation. And then freeze, which actually happens very, very commonly in these situations, is that our body is not doing what our mind wants it to. Our body is not reacting the way that we expect it to. We are frozen with fear. We are frozen in shock. Our mind may go somewhere else. We may dissociate. We may leave that situation because we can't deal with or cope or believe what is happening to us. Victims of sexual violence exhibit a spectrum of responses to the assault, which can include being extremely calm, being hysterical, being withdrawn, expressing anger or apathy, denying that it's even happening, and then even going into shock. Being sexually assaulted is a very traumatic experience. Reactions to the assault and the length of time needed to process through the event vary with each person. We need to remember that there is no right way to react when we've been sexually assaulted. Assumptions about the way that a victim should act may be detrimental to that person's ability to cope with the trauma and work through the trauma. And these results can vary over time. Okay. All right. The last myth we're going to talk about today is that men are not victims of sexual violence. There could be nothing further than the truth. We have to remember that rape is not about sex at all. It is not about the act of sex, but instead it is about gaining power and control over another person, regardless of gender, age, or sexual orientation. Same-sex assaults can and do occur. Many convicted rapists were married or had regular sexual partners at the time of the assault. However, the frequency of male sexual assault is difficult to estimate for two reasons. Number one, the reluctance to recognize the crime as a community, that men absolutely can fall victim to this crime. And number two, the victim's reluctancy to report the crime. So we stated before how sexual assault in general is a very underreported crime, even more so when we are talking about male victims, because in our society, men are expected to be in control. They're expected to be powerful and strong and never be afraid. So a lot of times we think that this cannot or should not happen to them. 1 in 5% of all men have been raped or sexually assaulted, and 47% of bisexual men have experienced some form of unwanted sexual contact in their lifetime. It's important to note also that the majority of men who are assaulted by other men, the rapist in that instance was heterosexual. So I know a lot of times there can be this misnomer that it is only gay or homosexual men that are sexually assaulting other men, and this is very, very far from the truth. Again, we have to remember that rape is not about sex, that it is about power and control over another person, again, regardless of gender, age, or sexual orientation. All right, so those are the 4 myths and facts that we are covering for this week. This is our agency information. So if you or someone that you know has been a victim of sexual assault, rape, or even domestic violence, which we deal with also, you are not alone. There is help out there. If you or someone that you know needs assistance, please feel free to contact our agency. You can contact our crisis hotline 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at 936-441-7273 to speak to an advocate. It does not have to be something that has happened recently. You can call and get support services, even if this is something that happened a very long time ago. We are here for you. We hope that you'll join us next week for our second video for Factual Friday, myths and facts about sexual assault. Thank you very much. Have a great afternoon.